Welcome to Fireside Jets. My name is Alex with my co-host here, Ryan Moran. Want to take a look at a couple of players, stock rising, stock falling for the New York Jets after OTAs. Of course, we have training camp coming up next month. It's the dead of the offseason, my friends, but we're here to give you some updates and content, some film breakdowns, and all this cool stuff as we prepare for the regular season. A lot left to see, a lot left to untap for this Jets offense and defense. A lot of new players and faces incorporated into the mix. We want to take a look at some players that we have noticed have taken a step forward during OTAs and at least look like they're going to take either a step forward or a backward maybe. One of these names definitely going to be a little bit annoying to hear, but it's early. We're definitely just, throwing it out there just so you guys know how the development of some of these guys are going. But Ryan, before we dive into this latest segment, how you doing today, my friend?
Doing well, Alex. A lot to unpack, obviously, but at this time of the year, you try not to overreact to anything. I think that's always the key thing, when there's no pads and a lot of it's just 7-on-7. I mean, Jets have held a good chunk of guys out of practice, whether it be Elijah Moore, George Fant, Sauce has been limited at times, LaMarcus Joyner. So I don't think, you like to ever overreact either way at this time of the year. It's something that's worth discussing, obviously, in this slow part of the year. And, you kind of get an idea on how things are going into training camp.
Right. It is overreaction season, as we know. The offseason is the worst time to gauge a player's impact during the regular campaign or whatever it might be. But nonetheless, we want to take a look at some guys during OTAs because this is what is relevant right now. And right off the bat, I want to discuss Ashton Davis. Now, we do know the Jets have Jason Pinnock. We have LaMarcus Joyner. There's a couple of guys who are going to make an impact at that safety position. Now, the question is Ashton Davis going to be one of them? So far in OTAs, he's looked pretty good, apparently, which is pretty exciting. He was a developmental player when they drafted him in the third round in 2020. Definitely a speedster, really fast. He suffered a foot injury midway through his rookie season, landed on injury reserve. He was sidelined throughout the 2021 offseason program and training camp. But now, he's looking to take that step forward and maybe become a legitimate starter on this team. But last year, played in 745 snaps in total, played 325 in run defense and 414 in coverage. As a tackler, he actually wasn't that bad. He had some good games, had some bad games, pretty inconsistent to some degree, 12.9% missed tackle rate, missed 9 in total, had a couple of bad games, specifically against Cincinnati and New Orleans in terms of the tackling prowess. But coverage-wise, he actually was pretty solid across the board. Give up 286 yards in coverage and 3 touchdowns. 2 of them came in the first 4 weeks, in the first 4 games he played, and then the Week 18 game against Buffalo. So overall, didn't give up that many yards. His worst game in coverage came against Cincinnati as well. That was his worst game of the season. Gave up 2 missed tackles. Yeah, gave up 110 yards and a touchdown. So definitely a standout bad game, but he has shown flashes of competency as a coverage safety in that free safety portion of the field. I'm curious what your thoughts about him moving forward, and if you think he can be a legitimate starter, is he kind of like a first reserve type of guy?
It's a good question. I mean, to this point, it hasn't been, I guess, what we anticipated with Ashton. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that he was both a very raw prospect coming out of Cal and he hasn't been available a ton, so that's really been the, knock on him up until this point. I think throughout his first 2 years, you've surely seen those, flashes, the glimpses of his raw athleticism. I mean, he's got a track background. He's got a ton of speed. He's got, some height to him as well. So that there are, intangibles to like to Ashton. And it's good definitely to hear, some of the buzz, that's been on him till this point, a couple interceptions the last few days. At this point, like, I still think it's probably LaMarcus Joyner at free safety, but I wouldn't rule out Ashton Davis and Jason Pinnock, just based on draft status, based on potential, a little bit more athletically that they both offer. So there is some upside with both players, but, it's definitely good to hear. You don't want to hear anything bad on anybody up until this point, but I think with Ashton, you want to see it in live game action. There, like I said, there have been instances his first 2 years, where whether it be in the box of strong safety or in coverage at free safety, where he's maybe shown those glimpses, but it's about consistency. It's about availability. And, I think the good thing for him now is there is some familiarity and continuity within the defensive scheme. So, hopefully it helps him mentally, just play a little faster and, up to that speed that he has.
Yeah, I mean, look, Ashton Davis, super fast. That's his biggest attribute. Can he actually become a good tackler, could do it consistently, not have those bad games. I mean, it's okay to have a bad game every now and then, but just like seriously bad against Cincinnati. And we hope he can become a legitimate player for this team and a long-term solution. But, we will see. He is performing well during OTA, so that is something to note. Next player on the list, as you mentioned, Jason Pinnock, another guy who's rising. Used to be a cornerback, made the transition as a 5th-round pick last year to safety. Interesting guy, right? He had some pretty solid campaigns, 6 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, and a pass breakup, and 175 defensive snaps. That position change for him, I think, will end up paying off in the long term, especially with LaMarcus Joyner working his way back from injury. I think, Pinnock getting the majority of first team reps next to Jordan Whitehead is extremely beneficial. Of course, Jordan Whitehead is a legitimate starter for this team moving forward, one of the leaders on this defense after coming over from Tampa Bay. So now Pinnock is expected to be that strong safety. I imagine Whitehead starting at free safety. How do you see these guys? How do you see Pinnock kind of impacting this team? In conjunction with Jordan White, how do you think LaMarcus Joyner plays a part in this? They have a lot of safeties going around here.
For sure. Saleh said it at the end of last year. You look back to his time with the 49ers and kind of how they were able to develop Jimmy Ward. His career got off to a bit of a slow start, and, he was really deployed all over the place, corner, slot, free safety, strong safety. And, they really put him, full time in that like true nickel role there in 2019. And, since then, Jimmy Ward has been incredible. And that was who Saleh actually compared him to, in December, I want to say it was last year, when they were talking about that move. He's got some similarities, I guess you could say, to Joyner, with the corner background. Joyner obviously played in the slot a little bit early in his career with the Rams. So, I think with Pinnock, it just comes down to the fact that the corner position is so deep, with Sauce, DJ Reed, Bryce Hall, Brandon Eccles, really is the 4 outside guys in front of him. It kind of makes it tough for him to, get opportunities there. And I think, you just want to see him on the field somewhere. So at free safety, he definitely has some of the size, the athletic ability, and, hopefully, like we're saying with Ashton Davis before, just more time in the scheme this offseason to, really be prepared. And hopefully he can have some kind of a role, I think Jordan Whitehead will probably play strong safety there in the box predominantly. You're going to have, LaMarcus Joyner more as that free safety, and it'll be interesting to see where Pinnock really fits in if they use him, in the slot, if they play him as a free safety and split looks, whatever it may be. So, hopefully him and Ashton both can continue to just progress here, because the Jets definitely need all the help with some unknown at free safety entering the season.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm excited though. There's a lot of good competition brewing, good players, and that's always a good thing. It's different when there's a competition battle and it's like a couple of sketchy, like not so much established players. And then you have a competition battle with some guys who are on the come up, even established, like Jordan Whitehead, like LaMarcus Joyner. And Joyner, speaking of him, he is a faller in this scenario with stock a little bit down coming off the injury. Pinnock and Davis making good progress here. It's definitely possible that Joyner is the odd man out, and he is a veteran, does have a lot of experience under his belt. But the Jets, they probably see Davis and Pinnock as more long-term solutions, so they might just want to give them the reps, which makes most sense to me. So I can see Joyner kind of taking a backseat. But the most interesting player through OTAs has been Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson definitely has had his fair share of inconsistencies, some accuracy issues. His decision-making has been questionable. A couple of interceptions. He had 1 on Wednesday and 2 on Thursday. This is a guy who, in my opinion, is using practice to make those mistakes now. So in game, you don't see them as much, right? Like I say this all the time. I said, I hope, like I was talking about Daniel Jones the other day. I was like, I hope he keeps throwing interceptions in practice, because that's when you're supposed to throw interceptions, right? At the end of the day, you want to be taking those risks, taking those chances, trying to fit the ball into that little window in practice. Because what happens is when that safety, your cornerback steps in front and picks it off, okay, now I know that ball's got to be 5 inches more to the left. That ball's got to be there instead of here. I got to turn my body a different direction. I got to do something different. You can learn from those interceptions in practice, but during the game, they matter. They count. They may result in a turnover and an opposing touchdown. They might turn into a field goal that ends up being the differential in the game. You got to do it when it doesn't matter in practice in a controlled environment. So Zach Wilson, while they did label him as a faller regarding his stock, I think keep throwing the interceptions if it means you're trying to take chances and take risks in a controlled environment where you can learn from each mistake and learn from each situation, because ultimately that is what he needs to be doing. He needs to be doing when it doesn't matter, and coaches are able to give him the insight and advice after the fact instead of maybe turning it into a game-ending interception at the end in a fourth quarter against the Patriots in a division matchup. This is where he needs to be making those mistakes. So what is your initial impression off of like kind of a couple interceptions, a couple mistakes and inaccuracies from Zach Wilson?
Comes back to exactly what we said earlier on. I mean, there's no pads yet. It's 7-on-7. It's overreaction season, to take your phrase. And, you said it best. You want the mistakes to just kind of get out of the way now. You want to learn. You want to have the time to study it, when things slow down before training camp, for Zach, and come into training camp ready to go when things are, 11-on-11 and there's pads, there's more physicality out there. I think it is worth noting, like, some of the, reports that have been coming out throughout, this OTA period is, maybe the starts for Zach have been slow, but he has kind of gradually picked it up, each practice in terms of the accuracy. You've seen a couple of the clips that the Jets have posted just in terms of some of the arm angles that he's been throwing it from. And I think that's one of his best attributes. And it goes to show you his real arm talent, that he can let the ball go from a variety of arm angles. And like I said, Elijah Moore really hasn't practiced a ton, George Fant. So I think it's, overreaction season. There's no pads yet. And you try not to really go too crazy with guys who are reportedly doing well or not too well. And I think with Zach, it's just all part of the process. There's going to be growth. He's still very young, and you want the mistakes to occur now, like you said.
Exactly right. And when it comes to the offense right now, there's also a couple new faces in the mix that they have to get used to. Laken Tomlinson at left guard. You have Mekhi Becton coming back, and Zach Wilson's barely had any time on the field with him. You have Garrett Wilson. And you have some new tight ends. It's with Conklin and Jeremy Ruckert. He needs time to get used to these guys. It's freaking OTAs, and people are freaking out. So let's put away the over exaggeration on the inaccuracies or drops or whatever it might be, and focus more on the fact that he now knows what mistakes he's making and what he's supposed to do differently, right? Last year, he was making a mistake and then doing it again, right? And then doing it again and again and again. And you're like, okay, you're not learning from these mistakes right now. This year, in practice at least, they're saying that he makes a mistake and then he corrects it on the next one. Like, he's learning from it. He knows, okay, I was supposed to go to this guy. I'm getting through my reads more efficiently. That is what you want to see from Zach Wilson. That will translate to NFL games. That will actually help him during live action. So I think right now it's fair to say, Zach Wilson's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. He looks smarter. He's put on some mass. He's doing better in terms of getting through his progressions. I'm more than fine. His deep ball looks as good as ever. He's had a couple of phenomenal passes downfield. So I'm not worried whatsoever about Zach Wilson. But that really kind of wraps up the main guys. The last one I do want to hit on is Tyler Conklin. Apparently he's been killing it as well, with Jeremy Ruckert and CJ Uzomah kind of both nursing minor injuries. Conklin's gotten the majority of the reps. Pretty solid player overall. He's probably going to get a lot of action this year, coming from Minnesota. Definitely a solid blocker, a good receiver, had his best receiving season last season with the Vikings. So I imagine that Mike LaFleur is going to get him very involved. Whether that means he's starting, and I think that ultimately he will probably end up getting a lot of the starting snaps. CJ Uzomah is definitely a great tight end as well, capable of being a featured tight end, but he does have some injury history going back to last season. Jeremy Ruckert, love him as a prospect. Let him develop behind the scenes, see what he's got. He can be a really good guy if injuries arise this year for whatever reason. But I think Conklin, I wouldn't be surprised if he emerged as a TE1 to start, and CJ Uzomah was kind of like maybe splitting reps, maybe getting like 40%. Maybe doing a lot of two tight end sets and getting them both involved. They're both pretty solid receivers. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Tyler Conklin and how they're going to split those reps up.
For sure. I was really excited when the Jets signed Tyler Conklin. Him, Jordan Whitehead, DJ Reed. I mean, those were a couple of the guys at the top of the wish list for me. And I was pumped, even after signing Uzomah, to see, Conklin on another 3-year deal as well. A guy who's got really sure hands, catching the football. He's a good route runner, can create separation. And I just think underneath for Zach, he's going to be a security blanket time and time again. A guy who can just consistently be open, catch the football. And, I think last year was really just the start for him. It was his first real opportunity when you look at his target amount throughout the first 3 years of his career, and then last year. And the fact that he's still only 26, it's really not too surprising to hear. I liked him a lot when the Jets signed him. Like I said, going into free agency, he was somebody I really wanted. And it's really not too surprising to hear that, he's the projected tight end one of the group. I think, like you said best there, Mike LaFleur wants to run more 12 personnel. He showed that the first month of last season, before some injuries and inconsistency started to take place in position. So I think on first and second down, you're probably going to see a good chunk of both Conklin and Uzama. I think that's fair to say. When it gets interesting is when things are in 11 personnel on third down, more or less, and they have one tight end out there. I think that's maybe when you could see a bit of a balance, between Conklin and Uzama, with ultimately maybe more reps going towards Conklin.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this roster shakes out as training camp approaches in the preseason and the regular season comes along. But guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely would love to hear your thoughts on the risers and fallers over OTAs and what you're thinking about Zach Wilson. Of course, we both think over-exaggeration season. It's definitely kind of blasphemous that they are saying things about Zach Wilson already in OTAs. But we'll remain steady and steadfast and keep you guys tame for the most part and help you guys see this team in a more, not with rose-colored glasses, but rather just a balanced perspective where we can look at the pros and cons and look over each player individually and how they're performing and how they will make an impact moving forward. So hope you guys are enjoying this podcast. So for daily content, as always, make sure to tune in tomorrow for the next episode and make sure to like and subscribe as always if you want to get involved with the community. Going to be doing some cool stuff, getting away some cool t-shirts and designs we're creating and stickers and all that stuff to help you guys be a part of this awesome Fireside Jets community. So thank you so much for the support, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.